Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to make you aware of a new online course I am offering through the University of Lynchburg's Professional Development Institute. The course is called Thriving Community Arts Strategies for Sustainable Success. This 8-week program will empower professionals and volunteers with the knowledge and skills needed to foster and sustain successful arts initiatives in small communities. There will be interactive online sessions, national research, and practical assignments that are designed to build a robust understanding of the unique challenges and opportunities within our small American communities. There's a link in the show notes to more information about the course and where and how to sign up. I also want to make you aware of a reduced nonprofit rate. You can receive more information about that rate by sending an email to pdi@lynchburg.edu. Again, that's pdi@lynchburg.edu. And now for this month's episode.
You are listening to the Small Town Big Arts podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Kirshner, the CEO of the Academy Center of the Arts in Lynchburg, Virginia. In my own work as an arts leader, I have found it difficult to access resources for arts organizations and artists serving smaller communities. On each episode, Small Town Big Arts sets out to drive conversations and provide inspiration for those serving smaller communities through the arts. If you like what you hear, please rate and review us and share with your friends and colleagues who are working to promote the arts in smaller communities across America. You can also learn more by visiting us at smalltownbigarts.com.
Welcome to the August 2024 Small Town Big Arts podcast. August of this year marks the 2-year anniversary of Small Town Big Arts, which has been a labor of love for the last 2 years for myself. I believe with this being marking the second year, I believe this is my 24th podcast, I think. And in marking the second anniversary of Small Town Big Arts, I wanted to maybe start a tradition because I did this last year. And that is to interview Jessy Shipe, who's the executive director of Second Stage. And a bit of a background on that, the genesis of Small Town Big Arts was when I came to Second Stage to help facilitate a strategic planning process at the beginning of a sabbatical I took over 2 years ago. And during that process, I found that there was really limited online information and resources for organizations in smaller communities. And so that sort of set me on a path to begin to try to build such a resource. And Second Stage was the inspiration for that. So last year, and you can check in the archives of the podcast, I interviewed Jessy 2023 of August last year, because Jessy had come into the job as the executive director at Second Stage after I had done the strategic planning process, and I was so impressed by the visibility and the really resurrection of the organization that was occurring last year. So I thought it would be fun to check back in with Jessy another year later to see how things are going. And I am sure a lot of what we'll talk about today will be relatable for folks out there, and it'll be fun to catch up with Jessy. So Jessy, welcome to Small Town Big Arts.
Thank you so much. And what kind words you have. I appreciate you.
Well, I will say this, my big takeaway from the last time that I spoke with Jessy was, there are times, that organizations are successful because of the unbelievable selfless efforts of individuals who kind of really rise above and do more, I think, even than very often a community could afford to have. And this is no exception to that. Jessy has worked incredibly hard, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
Thank you.
And as an outsider, Amherst County, where Jessy is my home town, and she's in the town of Amherst, which is my hometown. And this is about a 20-minute drive from the city of Lynchburg, where I live. So it's not directly my community, but it is certainly close. And I keep a close eye on Second Stage. And the amount of activity you all have right now is just so impressive, and it's so clearly vibrant. So we're going to get into some specific questions here, Jessy, but how are things going generally? How are you feeling? You're now what, a year and a half, a year, 3/4
The end of
there now?
July was 2 years for me.
Okay, so two
Oh,
years, 2 years
yeah,
plus. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. I I love to engage with the community, and I feel like that is really where my passion lies. So being able to have a creative outlet here, and lead something that's just really special is near and dear to my heart. Um, it really is a labor of love, I think.
Yeah,
But it's good. I enjoy the freedom to be creative, the engagement that I have with people in the community, and then just the experimentation of different things and activities that we can do, and helping people to realize that they don't have to look to big cities for different entertainment and activities. They can have that in their own backyard. So reaching
amen.
out, listening to people, different needs, and then finding a way to meet those needs, is really special.
That's great. And I think we're going to probably get further into this, but a key thing that Jesse just said was, just now is really about keying in on the needs of the community and be responsive to that community, and that is a critical component of success. A little bit of background on Second Stage for those who may not remember, but Second Stage is the building that Second Stage occupies was originally a church in the town of Amherst, which is a very small town. Jesse, do you remember the population off the top of your head? I can dig that up,
Ooh,
but
I can look it up real
it's
quick.
probably like around, maybe the town's maybe around 2,000, maybe. That's sort
I
of a number
think
I'm
that's
pulling.
about right.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
it's relatively small.
it's about 2,200, I think.
2,200. Okay, so it wasn't far off.
Yeah.
So this
And the whole
church,
county is 31,000, so even
31,000.
that is not massive.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So there was a church that closed, and I know for many in small communities, this is pretty common. We're seeing houses of worship very often shuttering, and these buildings remain. So it was a church in downtown Amherst, and there was a group that organized around taking this empty building over rather than having it ripped down and turning it into a community arts space. So just really quickly, give us a little bit of overview of what you all have in the building and also a little bit of what you all do before we kind of launch into our discussion.
Yeah, so it's actually a really neat concept, and we've had some people come here who are looking to do similar things in other towns just to see how we function and operate. So we basically have three different common spaces, excluding what we have outside, and there's picnic tables and a patio and that kind of stuff outside. But inside we have what we call our main hall, which is black and white checked floor. There's a balcony, a stage. So that's where we do all of our concerts and performances. And then we also offer private rentals in that space. Our community room is downstairs, and that holds about 80 people. There's a kitchen adjacent to that space. And we offer different art classes, workshops, activities, private rentals in that space, summer camps, that kind of thing. And then we have our green room, which is kind of the back room off of the stage, but we also multi-purpose that into office space or a boardroom, per se. And then we have our studios. So we have different offices that are within the building. And those house, we have right now, there's an artist, counselors. We have someone that does acupuncture, there's midwife, a bookkeeper, we have a yoga studio and massage therapy, and a coffee shop and bookstore. So we really do have our own little community within our building.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty impressive and pretty incredible. And
Mm.
and I'll just share, just even within the last 2 weeks, your activity has reached my radar. Like, I know that, in kind of two different versions. One, I was just talking to Patty Doherty the other day, who's a area musician here in Lynchburg, and Patty just did a concert there, and my parents actually attended, so I talked to both of them separately about it. And full house and great concert. Really really awesome to hear that. And then I saw that you all must have had a rental too. I saw that Senator Tim Kaine was in the space, doing a campaign stop. And so, it's the use of that, as a public space, to be able to be a performance space, but also a public gathering space just provides so much utility and value to the community, as well as when we think about economic development, right? These studios and spaces
Right.
for smaller businesses to occupy. This is a great repurposing of a building and really a second life that I think is pretty awesome.
Right. Well, and I think about it, and I don't know that we could have designed a building like there are definitely workarounds that we have to use in order to make the space work. But I don't know that I could have designed a building like this that's going to function in the diversity that this one does. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this is what's great about it too right now, and this might be kind of a good lead in as we start to talk a bit, is that it is what it is because it's been responsive to what Amherst is, and I think that that's a big part of its success story. So what I thought I would do in our conversation with Jessy is there is a blog post that I put forward and in the last year or so, that I identified 5 qualities that I see sort of rise up over and over and over again in successful arts organizations and small communities. And I thought it'd be really helpful for us to use those 5 qualities as a bit of conversation piece to sort of see, second stage kind of 2 years into Jesse's time, kind of how these things are going as our sort of check-in annually.
Yeah.
So,
Blog post
two,
was amazing.
what's that?
I said that blog was amazing. I
Oh,
read it.
well,
And yeah, it was great.
well, thank you. What's clear though is that you are responding to these things, whether you had read the article or not. So it's great to hear you had, but it's really evident to me. So I think to start, we just were talking about the organization's a reflection of the community. One of these qualities is that the organization's, reflects the community it serves, and its identity is really entwined with the community. So tell me a little bit about how that's going. What's changed in the last year in that regard.
I think that it's still the same vision that I had. So we are a small town arts venue that we are powered to try to create we're creating creativity and community. So as long as that is our mission and our goal and our power, then it can look a little bit different. But I think finding common ground within our community and then finding those needs in the community and meeting them. So if it's activities for youth or ways to introduce art to the community, um, just giving experiences and accessibility to different activities and things. And then one of the big needs is accessibility to rental space. In Amherst, there's not a lot, so
Yeah, yeah.
we've actually found a lot of people by social media posts looking for somewhere to rent that is affordable, and I will find those people in that kind of capacity, and they'll share. So
Oh, interesting. So Jesse, is there like I know here in Lynchburg we have a like living in Lynchburg page that people post
mhm.
on. Is there something similar in Amherst where there's a
Yeah, we have a couple. There's a mom's group and then an Amherst County community chat
Mhm.
that I always try to engage in a positive way in.
Yes, yes, these spaces can be negative spaces.
Yeah. And then we get a lot of tags within Lynchburg as well. I know that a lot of people automatically go to Lynchburg for those and don't even realize that there is an Amherst um, chat option within Facebook. And I'm a guilty party to that. Before I started working in the town, I live south of the town, closer toward Lynchburg, and Lynchburg would always be my go-to. I wasn't really looking for things in my backyard. Um, So as people get to know us through different events that are happening, they'll start learning more about what is offered right here in the town.
Yeah, and I think this is a helpful tip. I think we're kind of talking to folks is, when you're trying to figure out how to be responsive to the community, listening to the community through these social platforms can be really, really helpful. And then just chiming in and saying, hey, and we're here, we're doing stuff. And I think even, later I'll share just, here at the academy, our visibility is relatively high now, but we even continue to kind of think of new platforms to engage in. And so, for example, our marketing team just this week has started to engage in the Lynchburg subreddit that exists. Um, and so, it's worth sort of exploring all these digital online spaces where people ask questions or seeking things, and you can be there to really respond. And or if you're seeing things thematically come up over and over again, where people are like, "Man, I wish we had X, Y, or Z," or "I want this."
Right.
Um, yeah. Jesse, tell me a little bit too, maybe about any new program, arts related program you've developed in the last year that was, that is new and perhaps was responsive to something you all were seeing or experimentation you were trying out.
Well, there was a need for the youth, and last year we expanded on a Halloween event, and that was by far our most successful event right now. But we do Amherst Halloween Bash and make it big and have people come to us and just have a good time. Forget about all of the other things in the world. But last year we had a several requests for art workshops. So we started Second Saturdays, which every second Saturday we do some form of art. It's always $10 and it's always a valuable something. So maybe
Mhm.
it's acrylic painting or paint pouring, or we've painted wooden blocks to look like watermelons. We've done some sewing projects, we've done tie-dye t-shirts. So something to pull people in, and it's valued for kids and adults. This summer, we tried to expand on our summer camps because we had a lot of requests for full day camps. So we had options of morning or afternoon. And then people could sign up for one or both, whichever one that they wanted. And then just unique workshops, like we have a stone carving workshop coming up. I've had a lot of requests for makers markets again, so kind of a vendor event, but
Mm,
everything has to be made,
yeah.
cannot be purchased and resold. So I'm actually in the planning stages of doing, we'll have five between fall and Mother's Day.
Oh, that's great, Jesse. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's finding those needs. I have people come to me all the time saying, I wish we had this program, or I would love to get in a class for this. Okay, well, let me see if I can find an instructor. And as long as we have um, the resources, then we have the capability of doing these things.
Yeah.
You just need the people to come to us with what their desires are and then show up once we have them.
Yeah. And there's probably a little bit of trial and error with that too, I'm sure.
It
But
is. Yeah,
yeah, but
we
but it
had
sounds like
a
you're being responsive to what is successful and continuing to build upon that.
yeah, definitely trying to do that, and getting the word out is crucial in any of this. So that's it can sometimes be a challenge. We don't have we're not in the we're more of the social media era now.
Mhm.
I feel like I actually just had a conversation with somebody yesterday about um 50 years ago, everybody picked up the newspaper and read it, and everybody was in the know of what was going on, and we just don't have that anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and this is true. I feel like across market sizes too. We kind of end up in these small ecosystems. But one of the things that is really helpful, all these offerings for families. Families speak to other families, and that can grow and build. And it sounds like it's clear that families need events to do. I certainly can say as a parent, activities on the weekend are critical to keep
Right.
everybody sane and together. And then also childcare, the summer, summer doesn't necessarily, maybe the end of school, but it's not the end of work. And so parents need um, activities that are going to pull their kids off screens and engage them, intellectually, and keep learning loss from happening. So you all are filling that need, and I know that that's adding to the value proposition for the
Thank
community
you.
without a doubt, and the profile. Um, well, that's great. So the second quality is maybe really, I think, getting to that, which is addressing a real and tangible need or needs in the community, and that your mission is not abstract or broad, and the need that the mission addresses is really clear. So I think one of the things you talked about in the mission is this idea of a place for creativity. Just tell me, what's the language again specifically? It's
So our mission is to inspire creativity and community by providing a place where the cultural, civic, and economic vitality of Amherst County is encouraged.
Yeah. So that is that is really specific and really clear. Um, Tell me a little bit, when we talk about economic vitality, tell me a little bit about Amherst right now and what that means in regards to Amherst.
So I think bringing anything into Amherst is crucial. When we have concerts and events, we get feedback from all of the different area businesses and citizens that we had to wait in line to eat at a restaurant, or we had a really hard time finding a place to park. And I'm like, that's a great problem to have.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great problem.
So I think having a place where people gather is going to only benefit everybody else around you.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely the case. And I mean, to your earlier point too about going to Lynchburg for things, um, the more that you can keep Amherst dollars in Amherst, the better off Amherst will be, right?
Right.
And
Right.
if
And
you're,
we want to
yeah,
be seen as an integral part of the Amherst community, but we also want to cater to the surrounding areas. And we do see that a lot of our events and concerts is not solely Amherst residents that are attending. It's people from Lynchburg, Forest, Smith Mountain Lake, Nelson. We have people here from Afton and Stanton areas.
yeah, that's
Buckingham.
great.
There's not a
That's
ton
great.
of things in that area, so welcoming all of our neighbors is crucial.
Well, and I would put that in the category of tourism dollars, right? I mean, I think the
Right.
travel isn't, out of state, but I would say that, these are outside dollars coming into the community. Very often I assume, you were just talking about Patty's concert, I assume many people probably came into town, probably had a meal there,
Right.
right? And perhaps visited something else in town, stopped at the gas station, all the things, right, that are help, push money into the community is really big. And then
Right.
there's the creativity piece of this. Jesse, why is creativity so important to Amherst right now?
I think that everybody has their own creative outlet. So creativity doesn't have to just look like art on a piece of paper, right? So we can get creative in whatever our abilities are, and coming together, just engaging with people can be a creative outlet. Coming up with ideas and brainstorming, and me asking people if there's ever something here that you want to do, please let me know. So people can be creative in what those outlets are,
Yeah.
and how to interact.
Well, and I think that's a good point to bring up too. Small community arts organizations, I do think um, being broad isn't always bad, right? I
Right.
think that, and in some ways, I think a real strength of smaller community arts organizations is to be flexible in regards to, the creativity is the main criteria, right? But then how is that creativity executed? right, can happen in a myriad of ways, and
Right.
being able to be responsive in terms of the needs of the community. So I think that because if you all were just one, you know, one thing, like you were just a gallery or you were just a theater company, um, you might be able to function and work. And I'm not sort of discouraging people from executing organizations like that in smaller communities, but the broadness of what you are, which is really, a building cultural infrastructure for creativity to happen inside of, right? And the community can engage and make that happen themselves. And then you help facilitate that, I think is a big part of the value proposition.
Yeah, well, and in thinking of what we do, like we have a lot of different moving parts to our operation. But having offices here and having a rental space, it's affordable space for small business owners. It's bringing more people into this community space. It's constant stream of income for our nonprofit. And it's creating a sense of community between all of the tenants as well as all of the community.
Well, and that community piece too was in that mission statement, and there it is too, right? And I think more and more, right? We were talking about digital platforms and these third spaces, right, where people gather. And I love that it used to be a church, right? Because that is, places of worship are third spaces, right, where people come together. And I love that the building is still serving that purpose, even if a bit different. Uh,
Right.
that's great. Well,
Yeah.
the next component, the next quality that I often see in successful organizations is the ability to engage the community directly in the mission of the organization beyond financial support. And this can manifest itself in lots of ways, but one of the most common ways we see it is in volunteerism, where people can, sort of directly help support the execution of the programs and the mission of the organization. And in smaller communities, that's very often pretty critical to get something done, right? Because there isn't, very often it's the volunteers that drive most of the activity.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how volunteerism is going right now at Second Stage. You all are doing a lot, so I'm sure it's imperfect, but it sure seems like more and more people are helping right now.
Yeah, so I, being the only staff member at Second Stage, aside from the market, because we do have a farmers market that happens every week, um, we rely very heavily on our board. And I do have a volunteer list that I will pull from on occasion. But I think one of the goals that I have for the rest of this year is to create a really just driven volunteer group who is willing to come in and help us. We do have a lot of community members that are friends of ours and supporters and would drop anything and come help us if we needed help painting or with an event or whatever the case may be. And I think that says a lot about who we are as a community. And I'm very appreciative of that. But we've had I unfortunately did not see this building when we first moved in, but I know that a lot of work has been done here, and we've had so many volunteers that have restored the building to be able to have this space in the first place, and then be able to maintain, ensure the success of the nonprofit through the board, through other volunteers that have been here, and then to be able to create a lot of the programming, assist with events and activities, um, and then just create the welcoming community that we have here is huge.
Just let's talk a little bit about the physical plant there, the building itself, because you mentioned, because that is a way, very often these buildings are buildings depreciate. They're difficult to keep up with, and it can be really helpful, right? Whether renovating a building, converting a building into new use, maintaining that building. volunteerism very often can be a path for smaller communities to kind of handle depreciation or reimagining or re-envisioning of a building and space. Or do you all right now have any kind of current building projects that you have volunteers engaged in, or for that matter, need volunteers to engage in?
We have several
Yeah, I bet.
several things that are
Yeah.
going on. Right now, our main issue is our HVAC system. So that can't really be
Yeah, nobody's gonna come in and put some nails in it.
right. But one of the things that I really want to do is rebuild the stage and make a professional stage. Remove the carpeting that is literally dry rotting. And those are bigger projects that can't just be a 1 day or a couple hour project. Um, but there's always cleaning that can be done. There's always work in the kitchen. Right now, aside from what the board and the building and grounds committee is doing, we are in the process of building a canopy over our outdoor stage. So we have our building and grounds committee, a few board members, and a few volunteers are all working to make sure that that happens. And then we've had some volunteers help us with the outdoor concert series that we're doing to celebrate our 10th anniversary.
I love that. I didn't know about the outdoor space.
Yes,
That's
so we
awesome.
have, I call it the second stage lawn, but it's on the back side of the building, so away from any traffic. There's a huge magnolia tree with picnic tables under it, and then a nice space where we've had a couple of food trucks here, and people just bring their lawn chairs and hang out with us and listen to some really great music. So,
I love that. I love that. Um, yeah, and I think, when the community engages in helping build these things, fix things, repair things, then they have a sense of connection and ownership
right.
to the organization that is sometimes worth more than a monetary donation. I mean, and sometimes it can turn into that too, but that is just so invaluable. And I would just encourage anybody. I mean, it can be really daunting to have carpeting that's got dry rot, and you're trying to navigate all this stuff, but it's also an opportunity to engage the community in solving the problem, and that I think it's helpful to look at that as an opportunity as opposed to simply an obstacle. Now, the HVAC system that stinks, and
Yeah.
and
It
and
does. It does.
and now occasionally there may be somebody in a community, right, who has some sort of level of expertise, but that's going to be rare, and there's going to be some things you're just going to have to figure out how to pay for. But
Right.
that may be another that may be another podcast for another
Exactly.
time. But some of these other things can be huge. I know, if you go through community efforts, get that stage built. That will be, people will have a lot of pride around that, and I think that's, and then they get to see the value of that come back, right? When performances and activities happen. And that's just great. I love that. I
Yeah.
love the outdoor space too. I think that is really
Yeah,
smart.
well, and I had on the Amherst community chat, somebody posted a few months ago that they really wish that there was a space in Amherst that they could go outside and just eat their lunch.
Mm.
And they, like you, didn't know that there was a space out there.
Yeah.
So it really is just an open invitation. Come see what we have, and use your creativity to figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
Do you need to meet with somebody over a cup of coffee, or do you want to just eat your lunch outside, or come in and use the internet for a couple of minutes on a project? My daughter was a student at CVCC last year, and the kids were doing different projects, and I was very vocal in saying, how can I help you? What can we do as a community to assist you? So they would come over and draw with sidewalk chalk, and they made a hopscotch board, and they had to watch people for a couple hours to see who actually engaged with that hopscotch board. It was it
I
was
love
really
that.
cool, but we are a unique venue or a unique community center that is able to allow those types of things to happen.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to hear too, allowing it to happen. A big takeaway from all of that is, one, Jesse's listening, right? So these forums, these online forums, and then and also observations of students and sort of what their needs are, and then in turn having the flexibility and the vision to and the responsiveness to activate the building and its spaces to respond to a community need. And then in turn, that just sort of grows, right? The more and more that people are realizing, oh, I can do X, Y, or Z there, then it can multiply into new things, and people perhaps now starting to visit the coffee shop too because they discovered that they can eat lunch over there, and afterwards, on and on and on, or discover, oh, I can there's a massage therapist here, I'll make an appointment. All these things are just really 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 important, I think, for kind of building momentum.
Right.
um so the next quality number four is about valuing the arts financially, and how it manifests itself in its budgeting. And this can be, I think, I think the last two qualities we're going to hit here are the kind of the toughest ones. I think it very often, or arts organizations are underfunded. One thing you can definitely say for successful arts organizations, if they're successful, is I promise you that they know how to stretch a dollar,
Yeah.
and in very innovative and smart ways. I can promise it. No matter what, you're going to see that being a skill set that exists within that organization. Um, Having that said, too, the kind of continued growth of any organization, nonprofit or otherwise, takes kind of continued investment. And it can sometimes be a game of risk, in regards to financial investment. Um, how is that looking for you all right now, Jessy? I know it can be tough. I know that funding uh, for a small arts organization in Amherst is going to be difficult. How's it going financially?
Um, I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
am
I understand
currently
that. You're not
trying.
alone in that either.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to stretch that dollar three ways right now. Um,
Yeah.
we this year have we started a sponsorship program that businesses that see the value in our operation can sponsor us to help us to be able to fund all of the things that we're doing, and fund keeping this building going, which is super important. Um,
Jesse, how does that look for you all right now? I think of a town of 2,200, county of 31,000. Is that a small business approach or thought, or what are you all thinking right now in regards to those sponsorship? What kind of businesses will you be targeting?
so we've had both businesses and um, individuals sponsor us,
Okay, okay.
which is great. We created a banner with anyone that wanted their name on the banner, um, to be able to recognize those sponsors, and those who see the value that we have in our organization. And we're very appreciative of their engagement with us and with what they see.
And I'll say this really quickly too, and this is me speaking to, um, this would be a thing that Jesse may not be able to say, but I will say, that any community, right, to maintain and keep its um, arts organizations, and particularly those that are providing clear value, right? This is clearly providing value. We look at what it's doing in regards to community enrichment, community gathering, small business development, all the rest of it, right? Is that the community has to give back as much as the organization gives to the community. And so, for Amherst is going to be, I sort of put out a call to action, right? It is important that you step forward and, and earn keeping this, right? Because you're going to have to support it financially. it's critical for its growth. It has to replace an HVAC system, everybody.
All right.
So
Thank you for that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not that doesn't come out of the air, and these are really tough. A lot of hearing you talk about the $10 Saturdays. You know, these events can be $10, um, or are $10, right? Partially out of it being affordable, but to keep it affordable, right? It means that the institution is limited in regards to its revenue. And so it's really important that communities think philanthropically
Well,
and
and honestly, the reason that we're able to do things for $10 is because Jesse is very thrifty and stretches those dollars.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm always looking for things that are on sale, on clearance at a bin store, and stockpiling donations from people in the community, and being able to use creative outlets to put something together. So the wood blocks that we use to paint watermelons, those were donated to us by a board member who made them. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it is definitely a labor of love, to be able to put all of these things into action.
Yeah, and love can go pretty far, right? But I still, right, Amherst, you got to step up. Got to step up.
Right.
I'm
Yeah, well, and
I'm saying it. Jeff Kirshner is saying that to his hometown.
well, thanks,
Step
Jeff.
up, step
Yeah,
up.
and we are immensely grateful for any support that we receive, from our community, whether it's at an event or attending a concert or, just sending a tax deductible donation in. We are immensely grateful for that, and it allows us to continue pushing forward in our mission.
Which you are clearly,
Yeah.
and I know from looking at the organization before you got there a couple years ago, I know that it's doing better than it was, and that's clearly due to the value you're providing, and then in turn we want the community to come back and value that equally.
Yeah.
So I want to hit this last point, which the fifth quality is this. It involves board of directors, and a lot these successful organizations, they very often have a direct and defined relationship with their board of directors.
Yeah.
And in full transparency, I'll share, and these boards of directors are sort of, they're they're organisms in many ways. And you kind of talk about them broadly, but if you break them down, and you kind of look at each individual is their own, brings with them their own strengths and weaknesses, level of engagement, etc. But I will share right now, I'm actually having some struggles with my board right now. We're at an interesting crossroads as an organization in which we had a lot of calls to action early in my time here at the academy, where the needs of a board were very clear, right? We were raising dollars and building a new building. We were trying to essentially bring, really honestly open a new organization in many ways. Even though the organization existed, it looked very different after the building was renovated and constructed, the new theater. So the board had a very, they were excited. They wanted to be around. They wanted to be in all the newness and celebration of all that was happening. But now that we're sort of settled into it, they're starting to drift.
Right.
And it's frustrating. It's disheartening. And I want to be transparent about this too, as I talk to Jessy about it, because it can be hard. It's going to be hard for Jessy to talk about it probably fully, because we need to be careful on kind of how we talk about these volunteers who are giving their time, and it's not easy to do, and they're busy, and they have a lot of things, and very often we bring people onto our boards who are effective people who have their own businesses, their own lives, their own struggles and strains. But having that said, effective organizations have effective boards. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm nervous right now, because I'm realizing I have some work to do to get the board kind of realigned and have a clear focus on what their goals and aims are right now. So Jesse, how are things going at Second Stage? I met your board a couple years ago because I spent time with them when we were facilitating a strategic plan.
Right.
Great group of people, really committed to the town of Amherst. And yeah, how's it going?
It's going well. I mean, I I agree with the struggle part for sure. There is only so much time that anybody can give, right? And we are all busy in our lives. So, in talking about this with you a little bit, I came to realize that in some ways, I need to take some pressure off of my board. They are the people that I call on whenever I need a volunteer. And if someone's not available, I reach out to others. So I do feel like I need to take some of that pressure off of the board. It's not that anybody minds or whatever. I just want to utilize my board in the best way that I possibly can for our organization. And yes,
Jesse's a better person than I am because I just totally am always getting angry at my board and just being like, you know, they have a responsibility. They're committed to this. Where are they? Why aren't they here? Or why aren't they doing X, Y, or Z? And she's like, I need to pull
well,
stress off of them.
I think
That's a
it's a good
beautiful way of approaching it.
there needs to be a really good balance there. And I do think that it's important when we have events or different activities or even in the community that we have a board presence that
Yeah.
is around.
Mhm.
But I also don't want to wear my board out. So I think making sure that um, one of the easiest ways that I know that I can take some pressure off of the board is to have an event staff that would work underneath of me. But then we go back to the last point that you made about the financial piece, and that's just not in place right now. So we have to make do and then try to shift our momentum in that direction um, for the future.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that too, because I think we might be kind of talking about two different types of board skill sets. And I think in small communities, you very often kind of need a hybrid that isn't always the case in larger markets. If we kind of simply define types of boards, there are boards that are working boards that are doing a lot of what Jesse's describing, where they're volunteering, they're coming in, they're providing manpower that you might delegate otherwise to a paid staff, but due to limited resources, it becomes really volunteer oriented, and the board is really needed, right, to work. And work can manifest itself in lots of ways. It doesn't necessarily mean physical labor. It could mean doing the books. It could mean building a stage. I mean, it can mean a lot of different things, but there's that working board, and then there's a fundraising board, right? There's a board that builds financial capacity for the organization. And Jesse, what I'm hearing you say is that you, in many ways, need some staff, right? It's a chicken or the egg thing here, right? Where you're sort of relying on the board to work, but you need some staff. But because it sounds like currently right now you have a working board, is that a fair assessment?
Very fair.
Yeah. So I think that, this is me speaking, I think, and kind of thinking through it strategically and hearing that. And I think if you're in an organization at a crossroads like this, it might be a time to begin to think about how are we beginning to think of adding some skill sets to that board. And we can talk about whether you all are doing this right now, but adding some skill sets to that board, they're going to help with the capacity building side, right? They're going to help with building the organization's financial capacity so that some of that volunteerism can be relieved. Are
Right.
you all in that thought process right now? And it can be
We
tough at
are.
a small town too, but are you all there right now?
Yeah, we are. That is when the sponsorship opportunities were implemented is really when we started focusing on what is our develop what does development look like for us? What does fundraising look like for us? Unfortunately, it is all kind of intertwined just because we are small. So the same people are doing that are our working board.
Yeah, which is very common. Makes
Yeah.
very common.
So, and that's what I meant by taking some pressure off of the board, with volunteers or with other projects. And then having those who aren't quite ready to be on a board just join a committee to work on the stage outside or to help with building and grounds issues, because in a building that's over 140 years old, we're going to have that on a regular basis. Um, so having volunteers assist us until hopefully we're in a place financially to not have to rely on volunteers as much. Still want them around, still want all of our community to be around and support us and to be enthusiastic about what we're doing. But having some not quite so much work on the board, I think, is important.
Well, the what I sort of find in this board quality is that how I define it is essentially the board has a clear understanding of what its job is and what its relationship to the organization is, and I think that that can manifest in different ways. It can sometimes manifest on the whole, right? Like the board of the directors of X organization does Y, right? And they know that very clearly. Like my job is to fundraise, or my job is to you know, put in volunteer hours at special events. Um, Sometimes it can also be done on an individual level with each of the individual board members, right? There's extra work there, but again, it also executes the same thing. It gets the same thing done. You are here on this board because you have this particular skill set, and we're looking at you for this.
Yeah.
Um, and the board member clearly understands what their role is, what their job is, and there's actually it's really rewarding to feel useful and to feel engaged and make impact on the organization. Where I'm probably faltering right now with my own board is that we have some board members who do understand their role, and it's very clearly defined. Like for instance, we have a facilities committee, and on that committee, there are, heads of buildings and grounds at some of the larger institutions here in Lynchburg, things like that, where they have this specific expertise,
Yes.
and that expertise is being employed. Or our finance committee is another example where we have, you know, CFOs from companies and things, right, that they can look at our books and they can sort of advise us in very specific ways. But where we're faltering right now is we have a group, I'd say about a third, and unfortunately, maybe even a little bit larger now of the board, that it's a little bit ambiguous, right? We added them because they were really great social service partners. But to be honest, a lot of that social service partnership, they probably would be doing with us anyway, regardless of whether they were board members or not, right? So I think their utility isn't clear, and I think that for them and for us, and so there we have kind of a breakdown, and then engagement starts to slip, and people start to sort of not come to things as much. And so I think, what will be interesting for Second Stage Amherst, and when we speak again, maybe in a year, I hope we can make this tradition. It'd be fun.
That would be great.
Is Yeah, is I think, going through with that board and really defining, okay, who's making this transition, out of volunteerism into this capacity building? Who is here because they're, really great at always showing up to every single event and volunteering, right?
Right.
And then identifying too the things that you all need for the future, right? And where do those skills exist in Amherst County, and how can you plug them into the organization? Um, so I think, you all are on your way. I think even the fact that you are thinking about that transition shows that that is an area that you all are making probably the right, if not exactly the specific strategic moves yet, at least you're sort of seeing it and identifying it and talking about it. And I think that
Right.
that's
Yeah.
great.
We have direction for sure.
Yeah.
And we also in July had changeover of our board president. And that is, I don't think that it was a bad transition or anything like that. It's just different. And unfortunately, the bylaws said that Sunny was not able to be here any longer on the board as the president. So she's she's still definitely here in different ways and still helping and advising. And if I have a question, I can call on her. But I think that changes like that can be stressful on a board. But we just keep piecing away and keep up with the forward momentum and know the direction that we're heading in.
Yeah, and I would say really quickly too, turnover can be scary, but it's also really important. Fresh eyes, fresh
Right.
legs, right?
Yeah.
All of this, perspective, all of these things are really good. I think it's why term limits are actually important on a board. But at the
Right.
same time, when you have people that were really dedicated, and Sonny, who Jesse's referencing, is the founder of Second
Wonder.
Stage too.
Yes.
So that comes with it a lot of weight, and it's hard to sort of make that transition or see it, but it's also important. And the thing too that you pointed out also is even when these folks roll off, you can keep them engaged, you can keep them committed to the institution, and then you're just growing your base of support, right? By adding new board members, transitioning them over, finding the new skill sets that you need for the moment. So all of that's a pretty natural progression. And again, Jesse, I know it's hard. I know that there's good days and bad days. I know from personal experience, but I can tell you from this conversation and from the outside, you all are doing it as well as any organization could in
Thank you.
in a town of 2,200 people. I think it's incredible, and what you're bringing and the value you're providing is just is so important. And I know from personal experience of having lived in that town and watched the town transform too over the last couple of decades. A place where people can gather, a place for creativity, a place for small business incubation, a place to hold special events, a place for outdoor concerts, a place to have lunch outside today. I mean, all this stuff is it raises the quality of life. And the town of Amherst is I went and hiked Mount Pleasant this weekend, and I stopped in and had lunch at the filling station in town. Um,
Okay.
and I was reminded it's such a great little town, and there's such, wonderful things about it. And a place like Second Stage can keep it moving forward. And thank you for what you're doing for
Thank you.
my
It
hometown.
it is something really special to see people who grew up in this building when it was a church and come back to have 80th birthday celebrations
Oh, yeah.
or want to renew their vows here. Or we earlier this month had a wedding here. So it's something that's really special and near and dear to the hearts of so many in this community. But then also the newer people that are living here or are traveling and just happened upon us, to see something of this caliber, right here in the small town of Amherst is special.
Well, it's an indicator too when somebody comes in from outside.
Right.
It says something about what the community values, what it cares about, how well it's doing, right? So
Yeah,
you want that in your town, wherever you are. Well,
absolutely.
Jesse, I am so impressed.
Thank you.
They are so lucky to have you, and I do. I think we should make this an annual tradition. So,
Let's do it.
happy anniversary to you. Happy
Thank you.
anniversary to me, and
Yes.
we'll definitely talk again real soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Small Town Big Arts. Remember to rate and review us and share with your friends. To learn more, visit us at smalltownbigarts.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Jeffrey Kirshner.